As a kid, I grew up listening to terrestrial radio on a daily basis. Of course, I wasn't calling it terrestrial radio as an 8-year-old boy. It was just radio to me at this point. I didn't know of any other type of radio. Radio was my only source for new tunes and how I actually began to fall in love with music. Today, however, times have changed. No longer are we using CDs like we used to. No longer is it the norm to obtain music in a physical manner. Most music can now be obtained for free in some way or another through the internet. Terrestrial radio is being hit from several different angles, not only bringing listenership down, but also decreasing job opportunity. The change in distribution of music and the digital revolution we're experiencing to this day are what I believe to be a big part for why terrestrial radio is not what it used to be. Working in terrestrial radio and pursuing a career in the field has only propelled me to take these things into consideration. I've asked myself a lot of questions over the past 2 years since I graduated with my bachelor's degree in telecommunications. Can I make a solid living while working in radio? Do people still pursue careers in radio? Why am I not seeing as many young people as myself in the field pursuing the same career? Is radio being outsourced? All of these questions took me to this one. Is terrestrial radio tuned in or out? In researching this topic, I felt as though it would be best to get inside information from individuals actually working in the field. As I now reside in Las Vegas, I figured that'd be the perfect place to start. So I went to my current place of employment, CBS Radio. That is where I'm a radio personality at 98.5 KLUC. I started out speaking to Sandy La Bonita, a radio personality at KLUC, as well as the PSA director for the station.
But I also feel that radio's kind of like the last option in music now. By the time that a song hits the radio, it's been shared everywhere, and we get it last. Because you have so many options. Back then, you didn't have options. If you wanted to hear the latest music, you would have to turn on to the newest station, the heritage station, the one that played the best music that was appealing to you. And now it's like, oh, why would I do that? I can just go on my phone, look up a station that plays nothing but, the artists that I want. You can create playlists of the people that you like, so you don't have to hear a song like, oh, this one I'm not a fan of, so I'm not gonna have to wait 3 minutes of my life to listen to the one that I like. So that has impacted radio. I'm telling you, I used to be such a radio geek, and when I would see the radio personalities of the station I used to listen to, I treated them like, oh my gosh, I can't go up to them, they're celebrities, they're on the radio. And nowadays it's like, oh, you're on the radio, that doesn't really matter unless, it really depends on how people look at you digitally now. If you have the numbers following you, on Twitter, social media, Facebook, and things like that, and you're on the radio, cool. But if you're on the radio and you don't have those numbers, your opinion really doesn't matter nowadays.
Sandy spoke about options a lot in the time that we sat down. There isn't really any way of getting around it. We have so many more options these days that radio just cannot keep up with. From streams like Pandora or Spotify to satellite radio and the internet as a whole, terrestrial radio just can't keep up. She also gave her take on how personalities are not seen as the celebrities they once were. I learned that fairly quickly at the start of my radio career, which was only a couple years ago. Personalities don't just automatically hold that precedence in society anymore, as there are many other options of entertainment and information gathering with a broader structure than radio. After speaking with Sandy, I knew that KLUC personality/imaging director John Moe would be making his way into the building soon, so I stayed around to see what he would have to say.
My personal thought on this is that radio needs to evolve and kind of look at, actually old school economics and look at supply and demand. We compete with Pandora. They're playing, 2 or 3 songs, and then they play like a 60-second real quick commercial. And we're still doing the thing where we play, 6 minutes worth of commercials in a row. So I think once radio really takes its role and really evolves as a whole, and it's going to take somebody who kind of has the guts to do it, to go, okay, well, we need to try something completely different. We need to promise that we'll never do more than 2 minutes of commercials or something along those lines. And I think that those things have started, and I think that will continue to be the path. But once radio continues to evolve with everything else, I think it'll be a lot better for us as far as making money and things like that. Now, we already stream our radio stations, so you can get us on your phone, you can get us on the internet, just like you can with Pandora or any of those guys. So that's already available, but it's finding different ways to make money on things as we move into the future, and as there are more competitive You know, if Pandora goes, well, we can reach just as many people for less, then we got to reevaluate what we're doing because we can't stop making money. Otherwise, none of us would have jobs. Well, we have a lot of different competitors now. Now we compete for advertising with Facebook. We compete for advertising with Twitter, and you know, obviously there are more radio stations in the market than there ever has been. And one thing that is for sure, a lot of clients, they go, okay, well, we could pay, you know, $5,000 and buy a schedule on the radio, or we can get a Twitter account and follow 5,000 people and tweet about whatever we want and get a very similar response. You know what I mean? So a lot of times people look at us like, well, now there are other cheaper options. You could create a Facebook page and then pay $100 to promote it to, you know, 10,000 more people. So obviously there's a little bit more competition when it comes to advertising. And for personalities specifically, I mean, a lot of times people are kind of like, well, is there a way to bypass the radio station? And instead of paying for endorsements that run through the radio station, a lot of times different companies will come to the on-air personalities and go, hey, you know, if we give you this, whether it be money or whether it be services or products, in exchange, can you tweet about it? Can you post pictures of whatever the product is on Instagram, you know? And so there's a lot of different ways that companies are finding to make their money.
Essentially, terrestrial radio would have to develop some type of application that did the same thing as Pandora or better to be able to compete, and that wouldn't even constitute as terrestrial radio, so there seems to be a pretty solid wall there. John Moog also touched on another very solid point. Not only is terrestrial radio competing with the internet for listeners, but also competing with the internet for advertising-based revenue. These are other options in different areas of radio. Listeners and potential advertisers are customers that are being sucked away by other sources. As a business or someone with a product or service, why would you want to advertise with terrestrial radio and only reach a certain area when you can advertise via the web and reach the whole world? John Moog said radio needs to evolve, but how can it become more digital than already digitally based sources? I don't believe it can. How can radio compete with free internet-based sources of advertising with the potential to be seen across the globe when it only provides a local broadcast? After speaking with Moog, I wasn't done in Vegas. I still had one more person to see, KLUC radio personality Bojo.
Growing up, you know, radio, your main source of music was just radio, you know. Radio personalities growing up in the 90s were almost as big as the music. The music, probably 98% star. Now, radio, 2% of it is the talent. Back in the day, you would listen a lot of the time for your favorite, you know, personality as well as him or her playing your favorites. Nowadays, it's okay, and that's what we're taught now. You know, growing up listening, I wanted to be that star playing that person's favorite song. You know, I want to entertain as well as, you know, just as much as the music. But we're taught now that the music is a star, which is fine, because, you know, we have to adapt. I was at the bar. One of my boys was like, yo, you gotta start letting people know you're on the radio more often. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, yo, let these. I was like, all right, fine, you know. And she introduced herself, and I introduced myself back, and I said, you know, yeah, I work for KLUC, the radio station. And she's like, huh? I'm like, yeah, KLUC, I'm on the radio. I'm one of the personalities. She's like, I don't listen to radio. I'm like, what? She's like, there's a little thing we call an auxiliary cord. And everybody was like, oh, my boy was like, oh my God, you're the one who told me to do this. True story. So this girl's probably like 22 years old. And she's like, radio? I don't listen to radio. It's a little something in my car called an auxiliary cord. True story.
Okay. Bojo highlighted the 1/8-inch auxiliary cord adapters that are now in vehicles. Along with USB hubs, individuals have the ability to listen to whatever they please, whenever they please. Unfortunately for Bojo in his case, the girl he was speaking with had already become too accustomed to using the auxiliary cord adapter and had no idea who he was or the station he represented. So after talking with some industry heads in Las Vegas, I decided it was time to head back east to my home state of Ohio. Flew into Dayton, and that's where my first stop was. I went to sit down with former co-worker and program director Faith Daniels of Alpha Media's 92.1. The Dayton-based cluster of stations, now under Alpha Media, were owned by another company, Mainline Broadcasting, just less than a year ago. Maybe they realized it was time to get out, or just weren't satisfied with the market.
It would have been a lot easier in the 90s, even early 2000s, for people to find jobs in radio, because what has developed is because the digital age of radio can allow you to be in more than one city every day at 2 or 3 different times of the day. Right. So there's a thing that there are larger companies that use voice tracking, where one personality is on in Baltimore, Cincinnati, they're also on in Texas, all in the same day. Well, that's voice tracking. Right. Well, does that then let them pay one person one salary to do 4 jobs? Yes, it does. Wow. Well, does that increase the talent pool? No, it doesn't. It really limits the amount of quality talent that's able to work and get out there and really change the world by changing someone's day, by playing the right music, having a great idea about some great promotions, simply because jobs have been downsized and compartmentalized into one person doing 4 people's jobs. So yes, you would have stood a better chance in the 90s, early 2000s than you do today, unless you were an absolute standout. Traditionally, a station has a variety of day parts: midnight to 5 a.m., then the morning show, which is 6 until 10, and then middays, which is 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., afternoon drive, which is 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., and then the evening, which is 7 p.m. to midnight. Now that's 5 day parts, where traditionally that would be 5 people doing 5 different jobs. And then we talk about weekends. There would be exclusive talent that only worked on the weekends, which would be maybe 2, maybe 3 people. Or then we'd have a gospel announcer that also did exclusively gospel programming. We'd have a community affairs person that only did the community affairs show. I'm able to do all of that with 2 people. 2 people. We have a syndicated morning show, which is the Tom Joyner Morning Show. We are automated midnight to 5 a.m., which simply means we have music that is programmed, and we use our station voice to kind of keep the hours flowing forward. Middays, we have Skip Porter, who takes care of that. I'm on afternoon drive. 7 to midnight is our quiet storm. It's automated also. Well, it's really what the nation is doing right now. And when we talk about money, that's where you kind of it'll always boil down to money. When it boils down to money, you're trying to figure out how you can do more with less. And to some fault, I've been able to do a whole lot with little of nothing. And when you do that, you realize bigger profits. You just do. And when you have the ability to do that, does it give you a certain job security? I'd like to believe that it does, but sooner or later there will be someone a lot younger than me with a little bit more energy than I have, that has been in the business a lot less time than I have, that will come along, and that I look forward to that day, that I will be able to bring them along, show them everything that I do, take them through the ropes so that they understand what I'm doing, how to do it, and then eventually it is my responsibility not to hang around forever. Hand the reins over to someone else and allow them to grow and bloom the same way someone did for me. Well, I think one of the things that we are trying to draw the line between, has the internet and so many new ways to gather music, has it hurt us in radio? Radio's still here. Radio's still making millions of dollars.
Faith mentioned grooming someone else to bloom in the industry someday. Will that day come, though? Are there a lot of young people pursuing jobs in radio anymore? Not that I've seen. So maybe radio is adapting by phasing out the actual live personality. If terrestrial radio can retain income by decreasing staff size, why wouldn't they do it? Is that what it's coming to? For terrestrial radio to survive and prosper, they have to lessen the need for radio personalities? Clearly, if Faith can handle all of those roles with just 2 people, there is no actual need for someone else. And if the listeners aren't necessarily anxious for more personalities and new people, then what's the need? After speaking with Faith, I hopped in the car and drove up to Cleveland, where my next appointment was located. Here I was speaking with a good friend of mine and mentor whose career started in Shreveport, Louisiana, then took her to Toledo, Ohio to do middays, and now to doing overnights at Radio 1 Z1079 in Cleveland.
we're no longer your source for new music. You don't come here to hear new music first. Actually, we just had a meeting where our boss said, stop saying new song by such and such. Because let's be real. You have an iPhone. You have the internet. It's not new. You rarely hear something new here first. So that definitely takes away from it. But, and obviously, even with TMZ and blog sites, you don't come here for your news first either. You are. So like with our station, we sell tweets. You know, like a company, we will tweet from our station account and you pay for it. Or you pay to be on our website and advertise. You pay for Instagram. So we found ways to integrate ourselves into the digital market so we can continue that cash flow. We can't really compete with someone who has less commercials and doesn't and curses and plays a bigger variety of music. All we can do is have better jocks.
Lil D did bring up some solid points though. Terrestrial radio is not the first source for new music anymore, not by any means. She did bring up an interesting point of the station selling tweets and blog posts for advertising, which is a way that radio is adapting to the digital age. I thought that was pretty interesting, and maybe that's terrestrial radio's answer. But if the product isn't the first source people go to for new music, chances are those same businesses and companies will find a more interactive site to advertise on than that of a local radio station. I figured it was best to stay at my buddy's house in Cleveland for the night as the weather wasn't looking that great. The next morning I woke up to even more snow, but had things to do and places to be, so I made my way to Toledo. The first stop here was to speak with the guy who gave me my first on-air slot in radio, Charlie Mack. We had to meet at a floral design shop where he was on set of filming a local talk show. How ironic, getting out of radio to pursue television.
Yeah, it has affected terrestrial radio in a bunch of different ways. First and foremost, I'm going to jump around. One way is, you know, if I can put a song on my phone and have it instantaneously and literally say, hey Siri, play 2 Chainz, and it'll play, I have instant access to everything that I want, every song that I want. And not just that, but you know, most people still listen to their radio in the car, which is great. However, as you see, the medium of that is changing. Now we're having, Ford and other automakers are rolling out Wi-Fi, nationwide Wi-Fi built into their cars. So now you'll be able to stream all of your favorite radio stations right from their website. When it comes to, people used to have to put a CD into the CD changer. So if you say you're listening to the radio and the song you like is on, cool. Then the next one you don't like. Well, you can maybe switch channels and that's it. Now, or even back then, you could be like, all right, well, let me go to my CD player. That was about it, the radio or the CD. Now, you can go to satellite. You can go to your iPod. You can have Bluetooth on your phone, and somebody in the back seat can be like, hey, let me press in my code and play something off my phone onto your radio. So with music changing, the way it gets delivered, the delivery is accessibility, and with the accessibility becomes a harder battle for us to fight. With terrestrial radio, we don't have to fight another radio station. We have to fight radio stations, phones, iPods, satellite, everything. If I'm not mistaken, that the majority of the urban radio stations, less than 6% are independent.
Wow.
If I'm not mistaken, which I probably could be. But I do know this much. However many stations are independent, there are not enough. Even the record labels are complaining because they if I have one station, if I have a company and I own 30% of the urban radio stations playing, urban mainstream stations in the country, you're going to play, this one company is dictating what the country hears on their stations. So if they say, hey, song A, I don't like song A is dead. You can't go anywhere else because they own 30% of the nation. So they want, okay, well, song A isn't dead, or it could be something personal. Somebody at this company doesn't like this record label, so they're going to give them a hard time. Now they got a problem. So it's just, however many independent stations there are not enough. Wow. Independent stations can thrive if you do your business right. If you are focused, you can compete. Don't get me wrong. It's hard to compete when you have a national media outlet with bottomless pockets. So they can just, here in Toledo, Clear Channel didn't need another urban station. But what Toledo didn't need another urban station. We had 3 urban stations in the market, which could only possibly barely sustain 2 urban stations of different formats. Then we had 3. So now this company comes in with bombers. You know what? We're just going to put on a jukebox station and just add a 4th station. 4 urban stations in Toledo, a market that is not capable of sustaining that financially. It was a chess move. So they have, but you know what? I own the signal. I'm playing jazz on it now. You know what? Let's just fire all the people, put on some hip hop, give it a new name, a new slogan, and now we got a new station. And so it's hard to compete against that sometimes. But if you are focused and you pay attention to your market, nobody can beat you. If you have anything in your house with a plug, anything with a cord, get ready to say goodbye to it. So if you have a hard drive, if you have even your power cord, everything is going wireless. Forget how music happened. Everything is going wireless. And no matter what happens with music, when I first started doing music, the first CD I got from a record label was Biggie, Hypnotized. They mailed me the CD. It was broke. I had 2 copies of it. One was even broken. The other one was barely working, and I got it. That was back in the day. They had to mail me one. Now they can email. You just got to adapt. Things are changing. You're going to change with it. You'll get run over. The change in delivery of music and everything in the different mediums affected my station just like it affected everybody else's. It's just like I said, it's something you have to adapt. I mean, with music, if they stop selling CDs and people have it available on their phone, then you got to get an app. That's all there is to it. If everybody's listening they can't have radio at work, but they can listen online, then you got to have it streaming on your website. It's just you adapt. Like I said, if you don't adapt, you will become extinct. That's all it is to it. So that's what we did. We adapted and we maintained.
Once again, with Charlie Mack, we're hearing about options. Charlie Mack hit us with, delivery is accessibility, and with accessibility becomes a harder battle for terrestrial radio to fight. If there is such a small population of independent radio stations, how are there not enough? How can we expect more to just blossom? Oh wait, we can't. Larger broadcasting corporations are now controlling everything, going into smaller markets and taking over. So do we have some type of radio monopoly here? From there, I made my way on over to my old stomping grounds of Welch Communications, the Juice 107.3. Not to my surprise, there wasn't much action going on here, even that many people in the building. I sat down with radio personality Tisha Lee for a very brief moment before she had to go and pick her son up from school.
You can now, but see the difference now, what they didn't do back then, is you had your stations, your personalities right here. But I can be here and voice 6-7 stations.
Right.
A lot of stations don't do live talent anymore. They'll have one personality to voice several stations, and that cuts cost.
Seems she is hitting on the same point that Faith touched on. Voice tracking and personalities being syndicated, meaning they can have their show broadcasted in multiple cities at the same time. This is definitely something that has taken away from the job availability within the field of radio. After sitting down with her, I moved across the hall to speak with sales director Rich Hogan.
We're like dinosaurs now, man. There's not many of us around independent radio stations. Oh, definitely. Around 2000, in the early 2000s, 2001, 2, things were rolling really well. The economy was good. And then all of a sudden, 2007, the bottom just dropped out. And I'm talking about there were stations who were losing hundreds of thousands of dollars. And again, like I said before previously, losing a couple $100,000 might not be a big thing for a company that has multiple stations, but a company like ours, who's independently owned, you lose $200,000 or $300,000, and that hurt. And so that really hurt us back in 2007 and 8 and 9, all the way up until I would say we just started to see things pick up around 2012. Business is growing. People are not afraid to spend money on advertising. Advertising in most companies, people don't realize how important. It should be just as important as the light bill. I always tell our potential clients, you should use advertising. Think of advertising just like McDonald's would. McDonald's never does not advertise. They always advertise. They're the #1 food chain in America, and they never stop advertising. They always advertise. So I have to kind of convince my clients to continue to advertise no matter what. It helps some radio stations grow, but then people use social media as it is to, like, if for events. When people are having different types of events, then it hurts us in that way, because people don't come to us to advertise concerts or parties or different things that they're having. And again, you know, people talk about how radio is changing, and it's not that it's going down. They say that within about 10, 15 years, people are going to be trying to get rid of radio stations. Companies are going to try to dump radio stations. What would they be using radio stations for in the next 20 years or better? It's just a sign of the times, and but I do believe that radio's best days are behind them. The big jocks like your Tom Joyner and all those guys, pretty soon they're going to be extinct. Radio's on the way out. The internet has ruined radio. Right. It really has. I mean, you know, now has it opened up the doors for other things that are? Yes, it has.
Right. If he has to convince his clients to advertise, then the station must not be generating enough buzz or attention. Maybe terrestrial radio needs to advertise itself. Not just marketing through the airwaves and the music they're playing, but becoming more digitally integrated and getting people to view them visually on the web instead of only hearing them via the dial. From the Juice, I had to make my way across the city to Urban Radio's Hot 97.3, where I was scheduled to link up with personality Big Eddie Bauer.
Definitely, like most definitely, you would see personalities more out in the streets. You see them going to schools. You see personalities at a lot more community events. Nowadays, with the corporate structure, the people in charge sometimes don't really focus as much on having the personalities get out there. They're more worried about the advertising and just the music, you know what I'm saying? They're not so much into promoting the personalities. They're more so into promoting the commercials and the music. Oh, there's definitely less opportunity. Once again, with the corporate structure, there's a lot of, what do you call it? Syndication, that's the word I'm looking for. A lot of syndication, and that's kind of monopolizing the smaller markets' jobs. So whereas you might have 4 day parts before, now you may have a Ricky Smiley or a Russ Parr who's on in 50 markets. So that took 50 people's jobs right there. And, you know, you got the Breakfast Club, you got whoever it is, D.L. Hughley, you know, all those people in their syndication. That's good for them because they're getting a lot of money, and you can't be mad at that. But for your local personalities, that definitely is phasing them out of the game quickly. You know what I mean? Over the years, as the younger generations come up, they're kind of definitely fading more towards the internet, and you know, they don't necessarily listen to the radio to hear the hot artists. They go to the blogs, you know what I'm saying, and they get music from their friends on campus or wherever they're getting it from. And eventually, if the song is hot enough, it always works its way to radio.
So, to add fuel to the fire, Eddie B confirmed that in the corporate structure there is more focus on the advertising and music as opposed to building a name for the on-air staff. The syndication from larger companies is essentially holding a monopoly on the smaller markets and smaller stations. I seem to be hearing this a lot from different people as well. I had made all of my stops in Northern Ohio, so now it was time to head back south. I had one final visit to make, and that was in Columbus at my older brother's house. He owns an entertainment-based website, groundsounds.com, and has worked in the entertainment industry for years, so I figured it would be smart to hear what he has to say.
How's it going, everybody? My name is John Barron. I'm the founder of the LA-based music, art, and culture website Ground Sounds, where we feature a lot of up-and-coming music and independent artists. It's an awesome website for musicians who are trying to establish themselves. And I guess that helps separate us from terrestrial radio. I know a lot of radio is owned by Clear Channel, so you're going to get a lot of the same type of music. Whereas if you come to Ground Sounds website, you'll hear a lot of independent music and stuff that you won't necessarily hear on radio unless it's from an independent radio station. However, on Ground Sounds we also feature a lot of music from around the world. Australia, England are big areas that we feature music from. So that probably helps separate us a little bit from terrestrial radio here in the U.S. at least. So if I were advertising a particular product or something, would I choose the web or would I choose the radio? Well, let's just say if I were going to choose Ground Sounds to advertise, I would probably at this point choose the internet because it's an internet-based company. And with radio, I guess satellite radio reaches everybody, but oftentimes with radio, you have to choose a certain market that you want that ad to air in. Whereas the web, you can actually choose the audience, like for instance, if I was going to choose Facebook to advertise on, I could narrow it down to very specific demographic that I'm looking for. So in that regard, I would go towards the web. Whereas the internet is the World Wide Web, so you get people seeing the ad from around the world, rather than like who knows who's just listening to this particular radio station. So me personally, I would choose the web to advertise.
So what does his specific entertainment-based website provide? A more diverse selection of music and the ability for potential advertisers to reach clients around the globe as opposed to a specific locally based demographic. Seems like two advantages that his site directly holds over radio. I started this radio journey in 2008 on the campus of Bowling Green State University. There I was a part of both stations, WBGU 88.1 FM and WFAL Falcon Radio. The days when we would pack the studio beyond capacity and have the phone lines lighting up nonstop are long gone, but the fire isn't. The passion and drive I had then have only increased and grown into something much greater.
But are they growing in the right direction? The route radio is heading doesn't seem to make for a long-lasting viable career, and that makes me nervous. With CD sales declining by 35% and revenue declining by 31% since 2000, the music industry has been impacted just as much as radio has. The change in distribution of music and digital recording techniques have changed the entire game up. While certain companies hold a monopoly on the radio industry, it is not easy for others to stay afloat. And with syndication, radio personalities are indefinitely being phased out. With all of that said, terrestrial radio is tuned out.